Hello, what's up? Can you hear me? Hello, Stacy, Drac, thanks for coming. You can't hear me? Well, I don't care. I don't care if you can hear me. I bet you everybody else can. Forgot your hearing aid, Night Companion. Again. Always forgetting that. Yeah, I know, Night Companion's just messing with me. What's up, Four Warnings? All right, so let's start the night off for now. Just reading some creepy pastas. Gonna run out of these things before I know it. Oh no, Mandy's here. I can read her story. Or, yeah, I'll read Mandy's story first. Alrighty. This is a story written by Mandy. Mandy Mortem. My name is Mandy, and this story takes place when I was 10 years old back in 1996. Me and my 8-year-old cousin Brandon were spending the day with my grandmother. She had let us play at the park for several hours to release some of the pent up energy most kids have, and we weren't any different. We made a fuss about leaving as we always did, but soon forgot that after enjoying the cool air conditioning inside the car as it was the middle of summer and sweltering outside. My grandma promised to make us some root beer floats when we got home, but we had to make a quick stop so that she could pick up her prescriptions first. I was okay with this because her being a diabetic for years caused trips to the local pharmacy to become a regular thing. The pickup counter was located in the back of the store, and there was a small sitting area to the right where people could wait. Along the wall next to that sat several chairs, as well as health related magazines on an end table. The most exciting part about this area for my young, restless mind at the time was a bin of random toys and games they'd have there for kids. I made a beeline for the bin to see if anything new or fun had been added. As I rifled through the contents of the bright red bin, oblivious to the rest of my surroundings, I felt Brandon beside me. He yanked the sleeve of my shirt slightly as if to get my attention, and he whispered, Mandy. I huffed lightly and asked what he wanted. He suddenly extended his pointer finger out in front of him, and my eyes followed its direction. They landed on a middle aged man sitting in one of the chairs. I gasped quietly as I was surprised to see him there, as I had been too preoccupied earlier to notice. I observed him for a moment. He was wearing leather loafers, khaki slacks, and a white polo shirt. His graying hair was clean cut, so nothing about his appearance screamed out of the ordinary. His eyes were closed, and he appeared to be napping as he was what I assumed waiting on his medicine. I quickly shrugged him off as he wasn't bothering us, and I began digging back through the toy bin. Not a minute went by before Brandon pulled on my sleeve again, this time more roughly. I was starting to lose my patience at this point, so I snapped my head around to face him and shouted, What? He pointed towards the man again and quietly asked, He's playing statue. I furrowed my brows a moment as I took in what he said. Playing statue was a game we'd play when we'd randomly stand someplace completely still and pretend to be a statue. You know, silly kids' games. I scoffed in mock disbelief as I told Brandon, as I as I said, Brandon, stop lying. However, when I scanned Brandon's face for a hint that he may be messing around, there was none. He was still pointing, and he had a half confused look on his face. I finally turned to acknowledge the man, and sure enough, Brandon was telling the truth. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the man sitting with his legs crossed over one another. His elbow rested on top of his knee, and his hand cradled his face just under his chin. The most terrifying and odd thing about this was the smile he adorned. His eyes were wide, staring straight at us both, as the most manic, Joker like grin was plastered on his face. My mouth fell open a bit, but no sound came out. My brain was still trying to process the weird sight mere feet away. I broke from my daze as I heard Brandon make a noise of discomfort as he muttered, "I don't like the way he plays, Mandy." I felt him scoot behind me as if to hide. In the few seconds I turned my attention on Brandon to tell him it'll be okay, the man went back to his original state of laying back with his eyes closed and his head tilted back. Being naturally creeped out, I grabbed Brandon by his small hand and we marched over to where my grandma was at the counter speaking to the pharmacist. With the waiting area still in sight of the counter, I chanced to gander back. I chanced to gander back towards the man, and to my complete horror, he was back in the previous smiling position. However, this time he had moved to the chair nearest to the counter, nearest to us. I hear Brandon sniffling as he buried his face in the back of my shirt. As frightening as it was, I couldn't tear my blue eyes away from the man out of fear of what he'd do next if I wasn't looking. Luckily, my grandma paid for her prescriptions and we started for the exit. The entire the entire time on the way out, the man never moved from his psychotic, statue-like state. The thing that bothers me the most about the whole ordeal, even to this day, is I don't know if he was just messing with us or if he actually was insane. I may never know. This may not seem like that. I was going to say crazy, but the dude was crazy. This may not seem like that scary of a tale, but the oddness of his behavior, fueled by the fact that just a week earlier, a 7-year-old girl from my town named Morgan Violi was abducted in broad daylight, had everyone on edge. I'm thankful that man never actually tried to grab or take us, but whenever I see a clown, mime, or anyone with a wide smile, an unsettling chill consumes my entire body. Hey, Haley. What's up, JM? What's up, Ronnie? Dark Somnium. Kit Bina. Paranormal Stephanie. Double Jack. Bad Vibes. What's up? Who did I miss? Oh, Skyhawk. What's up, man? Sorry, I was on another page reading, so I didn't see a lot of this. All right. Next story. CR's not here yet, is he? Did you, Ronnie? You gonna do your goofy magic on it and make me look all fucked up like you do some of your pictures? I don't know. I'm not sure it's a toner. It's just a cheap mic, but it does the trick. It's all I can afford. It's a lot better than this crappy headset I was using before. Little piece of crap Logitech headset. Hey, thanks, Kit Bina. Yeah, how you guys like the new background? Look all right. Looks a lot better than it did when it was nothing but blank wall, huh? Yeah, for the longest time, it was just a blank wall. And every time I was doing this, I kept looking behind me like, man, I got to do something. This is ridiculous. All right. This story is called Hangman. It's written by K8 Leanne 7. Sarah and David had been very happy once. They were the type of couple that had made other people envious and deprived. They had hit jackpot when they had met each other, though it was many years ago. Knowing Sarah and David Bright, you would know that they were good people. They would just they would they would do just about anything to help out a friend in need. Knowing this makes it so much harder to believe that they ever deserved what happened to them. So, if the rule goes that no matter how kind and gentle and law abiding you are, evil and despicable things can happen to you anyway, some, I guess, would say, how could God exist at all? The day that sealed their fate was a Tuesday, and the time was 10:08 a.m. That was when the last unopened box had been carried inside their new house and the door had been closed behind them. Sarah had a smile on her face that was beginning to hurt. David brought in a bottle of wine and poured it into 2 glasses. They stood in contented silence, sipping on their wine and scanning their eyes over the walls and the door frames and the polished wooden floors. This was their home. They'd finally done it. This was their home. They'd finally done it. If you had known the happiness and satisfaction they had felt right at that moment, it would be hard to believe the misery and depression that would fall upon them like a thick, heavy tar that they wouldn't be able to get out of. It wasn't long before the arguments began, starting with petty disagreements, fraying patience to blinding, uncontrollable fights that led to damage and days of not talking. Sarah would find herself sobbing in the bath. Why, she was not sure. All she knew for definite was a continuing clawing feeling of despair in the pit of her stomach. Something bad was going to happen. Sup, whore hive? David would spend most of his time in front of the television alone, after Sarah had silently sulked up to bed without him. He didn't bother asking her what her problem was anymore, and he wasn't sure he gave a shit anyways. He just kept replaying in his head how much better he was before they moved in together. Maybe now he was really seeing a different side of Sarah. After all, she never stopped whining and disagreeing with him, battling against him 24/7. What happened to the fun loving, laid back Sarah he remembered? It was these many times alone in front of the television that he would begin to hear someone preparing food in the kitchen. Excuse me. A familiar sound of running taps and clinking plates and cups. Time and time again, he would question whether Sarah had snuck back down the stairs when he hadn't looked. And time again, he would walk slowly into the kitchen and no one would be there. He had said once to Sarah how their walls must be thin because he could hear everything the neighbors were getting up to. Sarah let him speak, but she never replied. She seemed to be doing that a lot lately. But what? She seemed to be doing that a lot lately. There, but not really there. Oh, there, but not really there at all. All this bad feeling and unusual events would lead up to a normal Saturday night where another big fight between Sarah and David was beginning. David was almost shocked to hear his wife's voice after so many weeks of limited conversation. She was screaming at him now. Her piercing voice was hurting his head. She was screaming so loud. He knew that she was screaming so loud. He knew that much, but he couldn't make out a single word she was saying. Been there. Sorry. He was looking into her eyes and he saw the hatred. He saw the searing anger behind them. She was so terrifyingly angry, but why? David tried to remember, but he honestly couldn't. It wasn't like he hadn't been trying to listen, but it was like he had woken up halfway through. But now David was getting angry himself. He hadn't done anything. At least he was sure he hadn't. What right did she have yelling at him like this? He had grown quite accustomed to her silence, and now her howling was really pissing him off. It seemed to have grown into an unreachable level when he eventually bellowed, "Shut the fuck up!" He hadn't even realized he had a wine glass in his hand when he slammed it down onto the table. The pain of the broken glass slicing clean into his hand helped to rip him out of the red mist that had descended him. Beautiful crimson blood began to drip and splatter onto the kitchen table. David took his gaze off his wounded hand and looked up to see Sarah was gone. He heard the faint sound of their bedroom door slamming shut. Jesus Christ, he was stressed. He reached over for his cigarette, smearing blood accidentally over the packet. Over the packet? He lifted the top to see there was no cigarette left. Frustrated, he threw the empty pack across the room and threw himself back down on the sofa. He didn't want to do this anymore. He was just so tired, so unbelievably tired. At that moment, David's eyes closed and he began to descend into a deep, dark slumber. Sarah opened her eyes and was faced with the illuminated green numbers on her digital clock. It was 3:15 a.m. She felt hangover. Is this another one of those stories? She felt hungover, but she hadn't been drinking. She turned her body to see if David was lying beside her. He wasn't, but that wasn't unusual anymore. What's up, Johnny? Then, in an instant, she remembered their fight. By remembered, she meant she knew there had been one, but what about she couldn't recall. She pulled her legs over to the edge of the side of the bed and felt her feet touch the cold wood floor. She felt a chill spread up them, but then a different kind of chill spread up her. She caught a dark face and a hand slowly closing her bedroom door as if leaving. The fear inside her was immense. A fever seemed to spread through her, and the fizzing inside her body was uncontrollable. Whoever it was had smiled at her. She didn't remember any of their features, but she knew unequivocally. All right, so this person cannot use basic grammar on some parts, but then they're going to put in unequivocally, huh? It had smiled at her. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a gotcha smile. It wasn't David. It couldn't have been David. She was certain she could hear his snoring downstairs where she had left him. She just sat there at the edge of the bed, eyes wide like saucers, just watching as the door slowly clicked shut. It seemed to be a few minutes before she could move her body again. Had she really just been paralyzed with fear? Slowly, she left the bedroom and walked down the stairs. The stress was overwhelming. As she got to the second to last step, she could see David asleep on the sofa, but she also noticed a small pool of blood below his outstretched arm. Without thinking, and almost forgetting about the mystery intruder, she rushed to him and inspected his hand. It was a deep cut, most probably needed stitches. She would have to take him to the hospital in the morning. She took some bandages out of the first aid kit and gently bounded his hand. As she watched her husband sleeping, analyzing the lines of his face, she remembered how much she loved him. What had happened to them? She must have sat back in the armchair after nursing to David and fallen asleep, because when she awoke, she was in the lounge. She looked at the sofa where David no longer was. "David?" she called out. At first it came out like a whisper, but it built up volume towards the end. David appeared in the doorway of the kitchen with a piece of buttered toast in his hand. Sarah cleared her throat to speak. "How's your hand?" "I think we might have to take you to have stitches." David looked at her confused and cocked his head. "What?" Sarah was now starting to feel uneasy. "You cut your hand last night. I bandaged it. You were bleeding everywhere. It was quite deep." David pushed his hand into her face like an unruly child. Sarah stared hard at his hand. It was fine, no cut or wound of any kind. Her mind began reeling, and she didn't feel so good. "What are you going on about, Sarah?" he said, irritated. Sarah sat there in disbelief. It wasn't a dream. She knew it wasn't a dream. David left her room and carried on making breakfast in the kitchen as if he didn't have a care in the world. As she sat there, retracing all of her memories of last night, trying to make sense of it all, her eyes suddenly rested on the empty cigarette pack down the side of the display cabinet. That uncontrollable fizzing feeling seized her body again. It was a cigarette pack covered in blood. She almost flung herself across the room to retrieve it. Yes, it was David's empty cigarette pack with dried, dark, brownish blood on it. When she shoved it in David's face a moment later, Yeah, just shoving the shit in each other's faces. David's body language completely changed. She saw the man that she loved turn into a small, vulnerable child. She could tell, looking into his pale, clammy face, that he was remembering finally the events of last night. Like the banks of the river had burst on the and the water was flooding into his mind. He turned from her, and as he walked away, she heard him whisper under his breath, "What is happening to us?" She had never in her entire life felt so alone and out of control. A week after that event, Sarah and David seemed to be walking around like zombies, getting up, going to work, and eating dinner separately. Sarah sleeping in her bed, David sleeping on the sofa. Close friends and family began to suspect that there were problems in the marriage, but didn't dare ask. One afternoon, Sarah caught David rubbing his neck and coughing, but his cough was more like retching, and he was struggling to breathe. Sarah asked him how long he had had it, and he said a couple of days. She took the cough syrup out of the cupboard and placed it on the table in front of him, and that was the only act of sympathy she gave. But soon his retching and coughing was keeping her up at night. She found herself staring at the ceiling, listening to that awful noise, praying that it would stop. The sound of it filling her with such dread, she began to sob. She sobbed until she fell asleep, hoping for a second that she never woke up. She was half asleep when she came to the realization that someone was tucking the sheets around her body like she a mother tucking her child in. But instead of love and security, it felt like someone was trying to imprison her, trying to immobilize her. She opened her eyes, but her vision was blurry. The voice that filled the room that night made her wet the bed. It was a raspy voice, like scraping gravel, and it sang her a lullaby. Hang, hang, the man, he swings gently in the breeze. Cut him down and slice his crown and feed him all to me. I'm glad I picked the right little tone to sing that, the right, proper little jingle there. The terror that she felt was overwhelming. It felt like it had such a hold on her. She was just going to implode. Sweat soaked her entire body as she rattled with an unimaginable cold. The lullaby was repeating multiple times and then came to an abrupt stop. She lifted her head, expecting to see the smiling figure from before above her bed, but there was no one. Nothing but the darkness enveloping the room. Her head wouldn't stop racing. She couldn't catch a breath. She needed to get out of this house. She needed to escape right away. She pulled her coat around her and slipped on whatever shoes she could find, and she ran down the stairs, calling David's name. "We have to leave! We have to leave!" She seemed to be screaming hysterically. David was hearing Sarah wailing again, and it was pissing him off. He didn't bother to open his eyes. He just turned his body to a more comfortable position and muttered, "You can leave. I'm staying here." Sarah left that day. She didn't think to stay with her husband, the man she had been with for 9 years, the man she loved and would have protected. She was a wild animal trapped in a cage, biting and scratching and twisting just to get out. As she ran down the street, her mind was blank, and she ran and ran with no destination in mind, just ran away from all the pain in her life. Eventually, when she came to her senses, she walked to her sister's house and asked to stay the night. Her sister, of course, understood. The sister, she just replied, "Wait." The sister she saw in front of her was wary, scared, and pale. "Have you had a fight with David?" Sarah just replied. "Can I sleep? Can I just sleep, please?" So Sarah's sister settled her in and looked over her little sister with concern. In the morning, Sarah's sister convinced her to have a hearty breakfast, cup of tea, and go home and make things up with David. She lectured her about how they were good together, and that the move and worrying about finances had probably stressed them out and they were taking it out on each other. Sarah ate her breakfast, thanked her sister for her help, and walked home. She felt so much better, lighter, brighter, but as soon as she approached the house, her stomach dropped. She didn't want to go inside. She never wanted to go inside again, but she was going to. Wait, but she was going to made things up with David? She was going to convince him to sell the house. As she pushed her key into the lock, that awful consuming sickness began to push stomach acid up to her throat. She wasn't sure she could do it. With the last shred of courage she had left, she turned the lock and walked inside. As soon as she was in the house, she heard running water. The noise was strangely soothing. She began to call out his name as she climbed the stairs. Every step she took, she strained her ears to hear any movement around her. As she reached the landing, she noticed water seeping out from underneath the bathroom door. David? No answer. She knew in an instant that when she opened that door, her life was going to change. Something so bad she couldn't stomach it was going to be behind that door, and she had to see it. She had to finish whatever this was. So she placed her sweaty palm onto the door handle and opened the door. The scene she saw before her stole all the air from her lungs. Weird spots began to dance in front of her eyes. There was David, and he was hanging in midair. He was staring right at her, eyes filled with terror and despair. He began to make that coughing, retching sound again, but it sounded muffled in Sarah's ears. All she could hear was her heart pounding in her head. They stared at each other for a minute, in complete and utter disbelief. Sarah staring up at him and David staring down at her. Water was still pouring over the sides of the overflowing bath and filled up the floor around her trainers. She was slowly looking down at her feet and watched it slither around her foot if it were as if it were an island, and that is when she saw it. Two footprints in the water, two footprints devoid of water, as if someone invisible was standing there, holding David up with their bare hands, and before Sarah could piece it all together, an all too familiar lullaby broke the suffocating silence. Hang, hang the man so he swings gently in the breeze. Got him down and sliced his crown and feed him all to me. I mean, it wasn't a bad story. It was just pretty awkwardly written in a few different spots. The story itself wasn't horrible, though. Oh, yeah, we all hang out on Discord Jam. Do you have a Discord, dude? Oh, yeah. Could you like and share and subscribe and check out each other's channels, too? Like, make sure you check out each other's channels. Yeah, Jam, man, let me know when you get a Discord, dude. I'll let you join mine. We get a nice little healthy group in the voice chat and stuff like that almost every night, it seems like. We're hanging out pretty much every night, aren't we, guys? Seems like it, at least. Most part. Oh, yeah, Jack, you do. Okay, you do remember me from that night. You took me to the dinner, and then you took me to the nice places and got me those. Oh, no, that's Pretty Woman. Never mind. Sorry. Is CR here? CR, are you here? What's up, April? You two became my best. What you trying to say, Haley? You calling me a prostitute? Are you hooking me out? Because where's my cut? Because I'm broke. Jack. Is CR still not here? Jeez, CR. I'll read this. I'll read the little poem that Mandy showed me earlier. It's called A Poison Tree by William Blake, 1757 to 1827. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow, and I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles, and with soft, deceitful wiles, and it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright, and my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. Thank you, DD Fresh. What's up, Dustin? And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree. So how's everybody doing? Everybody check out everybody else's channel. Everybody check out each other's channel. Support one another, please. It's always a good thing to do, especially because a lot of us are smaller channels and stuff. All right, JM, man, thanks for stopping by, man. All right, I'm gonna find another story. What's this one? It's hard for me to remember which ones I've freaking read and which ones I haven't. I don't think I've read this one. This one's called I've actually let me get a drink of water before I start. I agree. And everybody, please share this. Could you please share this on Twitter or Facebook or I don't care whatever you use. That would be awesome. Try to get as many people in here as what, my vodka? No, it's just water. No, just drink water. All right. This story is called I Found You, written by Peachy Leashy. 4:23 a.m. I didn't imagine it. I'm not fucking insane. My vision may have been distorted as a result of my excessive alcohol consumption, but I know what I saw. I know that it was real. I've been sat in a bath full of cold water for the past hour to try and shake the feeling of being covered in blood. Her blood. 5 hours earlier. It must have been about 11 p.m. when I stumbled through my front door. Perhaps stumbled is an understatement. I quite literally collapsed from how mentally exhausted I was, and all I wanted to do was sleep. It had been exactly 6 months since Hannah went missing, and despite my efforts of distracting myself, I knew that it would take more than several vodka shots. Damn, Haley, you called it. And the burning sensation that they left in my throat to stop me from thinking about her. Hannah was my younger sister. She was an introverted yet somewhat jittery 16-year-old, always looked unsettled, which is why I don't believe that she ran away. No, she was kidnapped. The last person that saw Hannah on the night of her disappearance was her friend, and she was leaving the party that she was at, till I walked into my kitchen and saw her sitting on the floor tonight. Hannah? I sputtered as I rubbed my eyes, trying to adjust my sight to the dark room. No response. She was sat on the floor with her back against the fridge, hugging her knees into her chest. Without hesitation, I slammed my fist against the light switch to illuminate the room, but before I could run towards her, there were 3 loud bangs against the window. I looked up to see my sister, Hannah, on the other side of the glass. Although her voice was muffled, the terror-stricken expression on her face, which was covered in smudged makeup, made it clear what she was saying. In between sobs, she was telling me to get out. I switched my attention to the girl sat on my floor, who was now staring at me. I swiftly turned around and grabbed the door handle, but the door wouldn't open. The handle wouldn't even turn. Whilst I was frantically trying to move the handle, I locked my eyes with the girl in my kitchen, who was now slowly standing up. She wore the same baggy, faded pink sweater that Hannah always wore. However, it was ripped and soaked with blood, which caused the material to cling to her petite frame. I glanced over to the window, but Hannah was no longer there. Had she gone to get help? I vigorously slammed my body repeatedly into the door in a futile attempt to open it. Then she started to speak, and my whole body froze. I found you, she whispered emotionlessly. Not moving her empty eyes from mine. Where the fuck is my sister? I growled. This can't be her. I thought to myself, the way that she was menacingly glaring at me, Hannah would never look at me that way. The girl standing in front of me looked inhuman and drained of life. Even though she looked identical to Hannah, it couldn't be her. Without a doubt, it was my sister outside through the window, and I needed to get to her. I wasn't going to lose her again. Suddenly, the girl threw herself into me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I yelled as I thrusted my body forwards, but she just squeezed me harder. Mindlessly, I kneed her in the stomach, reached for the kettle, and swung it around her head. As she fell to the ground, the door burst open from behind me. It was Hannah. She clung to my arm and cried as I stood in stunned silence, staring at the unconscious girl on the floor who was now surrounded by a pool of blood. It must have been about 2 minutes that I stood there, but Hannah's chillingly cold hands were gripped so tight into my arm it made me feel like I was standing there for hours. As as cold as she felt, her fingertips burned my skin. Suddenly, she let go and walked towards the girl. She still hadn't moved an inch. Hannah pressed her fingers into the girl's neck to feel her pulse. She waited for a few seconds, then looked up at me, shaking her head. Had I killed her? No, no, she was bleeding. She would have she would have bled out anyways. I knew that I had to do something about this, but I had to sort out Hannah first. I decided that I should put her to bed and that we should talk about everything in the morning. I didn't want to overwhelm her, so I washed her face, tucked her into my bed, and decided I needed to have a bath and take it all in. 4:23 a.m. I was covered in blood of that girl, and my stomach churned at the thought of her lifeless body on my kitchen floor. She couldn't have been human. Even the way she walked made her look monstrous. Hannah hadn't spoken to me at all whilst I was putting her to bed, which really worried me. All she did was stare at me blankly. Come to think of it, I swear that she didn't even blink. She must have been through a lot in the past 6 months. All I need to do is concentrate on all I need to do is concentrating on is keeping her safe. I stepped out of the bath, still feeling dazed. As much as I didn't want to deal with it, the dead body in my kitchen, I knew that I had to before Hannah wakes up. I slowly crept downstairs as the floorboard creaked beneath my feet. I stood outside the kitchen door. Why was I afraid to go in? My throat felt sore, as if I'd swallowed a razor blade. I gulped and I pushed the door open. There's CR. Gone. Everything was gone, and my kitchen had returned to its immaculate state. The body, the blood, it was gone. I stepped backwards and screamed as I nearly tripped over Hannah. I sprinted up the staircase to my bedroom where Hannah was sleeping. I pushed open my bedroom floor and collapsed to my knees. My head started spinning, and all I could see was nothing but an ocean of crimson. Blood stained my carpets and had been sprayed up the walls. The dead girl from downstairs had been cut up. Parts of her body were spread all around the room, including the head, which had been decapitated. Above her sat a girl with long black hair, blacked out eyes, and ghostly pale skin. She looked up from her cupped hands, which were holding what looked like the heart of the girl, and slowly smiled at me, her mouth dripping with blood. That's not my sister. My sister is the girl that's currently scattered around my bedroom. It was her all along. With hyperventilating and paralyzed with fear, I managed to make out the words written in blood on my wall. You chose the wrong one. Before I could catch my breath, the creature sank her teeth into the heart of my sister and croaked. Oh, and croaked, I found you. I'd say it weird like that. Maybe I am an American psycho. Maybe I am. All right, since CR's here now, I'll read the SCP Foundation thing that he gave me. All right. This story is called Surgery. I know, right? Been waiting for CR for like 3 months. The Frog Flies. The Frog Files. How long has it been since he had flesh under his fingers? Too long, that much is certain. This cell was small, too small by far. He didn't much mind being alone. That was not the issue. He had long since pulled out of himself those parts which required company. No, what bothered him was that he had nothing to do. His jailers would come and speak to him from time to time, certainly, but if he had ever suggested that he may improve them by means of his craft, they'd get all in a huff and leave. Silly, ignorant creatures, all of them. But what else could be expected of them? Truly, it was not their fault. They were simply very ill. A shame they would not let him cure them. Well, there wasn't much he could do about it at the moment. Might as well return to his work. Excuse me. Whew, I apologize. He laid down his narrow bunk and covered himself with his robe. He was especially proud of the robe. His jailers asked about it multiple times, but whenever he tried to explain it to them, he could tell they didn't believe him. What was so odd about a robe grafted from your own skin? Wasn't that what skin was for in the first place? But all they did was moan and complain about how it wasn't possible, how no one could remove so much skin from himself and still live, that no one even had that much skin in the first place. Showed what they knew. Was he not a professional? It was it was so difficult getting people to show proper respect nowadays. His mind was wandering again. What was he doing? Ah, yes. With long, well trained fingers, he began digging into his abdomen. The flesh there was so yielding, properly porous, neatly organized. Now, where did he leave his bone saw? Oh, yes, the liver cavity. Reach about over there and there it was. Hmm. The thing was getting dull, and he had no idea where he was going to get a new one. Never mind that for now. He reminded himself. Never mind that for now, he reminded himself. Next, scalpels. The long ones were stashed within the bones of his pelvis, and he had a devil of a time getting them out of there. He really needed to find a better place for them, but his body only had so much room, and any size increasing modification were bound to be too easily noticed in his current surroundings. Perhaps a second cranial compartment? Something to consider after he was finished with this procedure. He was forgetting something. He was certain of that, but what was it? He dug out his dwindling supply of adhesives from within his left eye socket. This required the temporary removal of the eye, which did not make the task any easier. Still, when it was done, he had all he required to continue. Spreading his robe even more evenly on his body and positioning the hem of it to support his neck, he began to operate proper. This one was going to be difficult. In order to reach that part of his brain that he wished to remove today, he'd have to bypass some rather essential segments. Failure to do so may result in severe harm to his memory, which would obviously be catastrophic. Certainly, he had no access to his old fallback brain anymore. Not that he would switch to that old one anyways. He had modified this new one, over a period of the last 3 decades, and he was not about to let all that work go to waste. No, he would simply need to be careful, and that was all there was to it. When it comes to a lady whose merit is not sound, but who makes you sniff and bray like a hound, he hummed to himself as he used the bone saw to slowly remove the top of his skull. He wasn't quite sure where he had learned that little ditty, but it soothed him. He hummed on as he laid the saw to the side and brushed off the dust from his shoulders. Kindness and beauty will do you no good. He reached for his long scalpel and maneuvered it around that part of his brain he hated. It will not matter if you're polite or rude. Carefully, he dislodged it from the surrounding brain matter, hoping that his intentions were precise enough. It would be good to have a mirror. It would be good to have a mirror. If success is what you wish, and to gain good health, he finished with the scalpel and grabbed his tweezers, which he previously retrieved from a pocket of empty flesh around his ankles. All you need to show is a good bit of wealth, a righteous pluck, and he was done. He stopped himself for a moment. What did he feel? He considered the notion of color. Did he have any preference? He remembered he was oddly fond of yellow and despised orange with all of his heart. Strange, was it not? The two were so very similar to one another after all. There was no sense in it, none at all, but he remembered the day he finally found his solution, when he finally realized the source of his problems. All of their problems. This senseless preference and all that was similar to them. Those were the key. So, did he still like yellow? Yellow, yellow. I don't care about yellow. Ha 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 ha! Yes! Capital! He had done it. It was gone. Another wretched part of him cleansed. Another remnant of the life he once possessed removed for all time. He was about to rise and perform a merry jig, but then remembered the top half of his skull was still missing, and reconsidered. He carefully replaced it and applied the remnants of his adhesives to it, making sure to also reapply it to them at the seams and firmly attach his mask to his face. They would not do for it to come off, not ever. Do not get distracted, he reminded himself. Gathering his wits, he sat down and considered the new composition of his brain. What new insights did the removal of the offending segment allow him? First, he should revise the conclusion he had already reached, to figure out if those were still sound. Yes. So, what did he know about life? That it needed curing. This was his first conclusion. The foundation of all that came after. He remained as solid as ever. His siblings, fools that they were, thought him mad for its realization. They were created to preserve life, they claimed, but they were wrong. He knew the truth. He figured it out all by himself. Life was a burden on those who carried its loathsome spark upon their souls. The bundle of contradicting impulses, cruel desires, and nonsensical emotions. Life was an ever multiplying beast, and in his profession such creatures had only one name. A surgeon he was. The surgeon he was. And he was the only one to figure out what life was, what it was really all about. It was so it was so obvious, he thought as he caressed the skin grafts that connected his face to his long beaked mask with slim, delicate fingers. Life was a cancer. Life murdered the soul. It was his responsibility as a medical professional and a moral being to excise it. He remembered his first operation of the type. His patient screamed and moaned, for the anesthesiologist was not there to assist him. As he cured them from their mortal coil, the suffering was lamentable, but necessary. For once they died, their true soul was revealed. This is what made him confident of the righteousness of his cause. Once they rose again, cured and whole, all they desired was to help their fellows reach the same enlightenment. The soul, he found, was not only desired death for itself, but for the world as well. To see the dead emancipate the living, That made it all worth it. All the mockery, all the hatred, loathing, all his solitude. He was the. He was not alone anymore. Two figures stood in his bare cell, staring down at him where he had laid. The first was tall, gaunt, dark, and pale. He knew him well. Lord, surgeon, it's been a long time. The surgeon did not understand. Long time, we're never apart, Lord. I'm an instrument of your will. I am with you always. His lord said nothing, only smiled. The surgeon turned his gaze to the other figure, a short, stooped man who refused to look at him directly, even without his mask. The surgeon knew who he was. Brother, brother diagnostician? You are no brother of mine, beast. The man turned to his lord. Let's get this over with. His lord nodded, then turned to the surgeon once more. I have a task for you, most loyal servant. Your expertise is required. What do you desire, Lord? What can I do for one so mighty? A small death grinned. Wait, the small death grinned, showing teeth like a row of tombstones. Why, dear surgeon, I have a world for you to cure. There goes that one. I'm here sorted too. Most of the way here. You see the little skeletal cat my dad gave me? He gave me this little skeleton cat right there. If anyone got any stories they'd like me to read, actually, man, maybe I should read some of Brad's stories. I think I've already read most of your stories, though, Brad. Honestly, hold on here. All right. I haven't read the newest one yet. Got another one? Oh, oh, there's a few of them. Oh, you've gotten two more. All right, then. I'm gonna read the second to the last one first, because I end up probably reading them both. Yeah, it said there was two posted on Halloween. Well, Haley, if you need to go back to sleep, I understand. I mean, you do wake up at 2 in the morning to watch this, which is very appreciated, by the way. Even if you are a black-eyed child in your picture, I still enjoy seeing you again. Yes, that is a knife on my fireplace. It's a dagger. Don't read the one about Mid Missouri. Oh, why not? All right, I won't. You want me to read the I'm part of an urban legend, right? Oh, it's not a. The what is it if it's not a story? I mean, if it's just an account of something creepy, I can read that too, man. All right. This story is by Drac V Horror there, or Brad Drac V, and it's called I'm Part of an Urban Legend. 3 nights ago, my son lost his first tooth, and I haven't been able to sleep since. If you've ever wondered how urban legends rise to the level of infamy, or the mere utterance of their names sends cold shivers down your spine and casts reckless teenagers into unexplored corners of nearby graveyards, or hospitals, or abandoned tunnels, then I can tell you that they are birthed in truth. At least this one is. It was Halloween night, 1983, and my weeks of hard work and pestering was about to pay off. Since my birthday in September, I had been relentlessly pleading with my parents to let me go trick or treating on my own that year. Even up until 5 minutes before my father and I were to hit the neighborhood streets, I was holding out hope that I would get to enjoy those few sugary, ghoulish hours the way my friends were able to. As he opened the front door, my mother called out to him, and in one in one I think there should be an of. In one of their patented silent adult argument, she told him that I was old enough to be trusted, and that if I didn't go further than Third and Lindell, I could go out on my own. In my overwhelming excitement, I slightly misunderstood their mute conversation. Dracula, take your sister, Mother said in a rising voice that suggested her idea was much more fun than she had actually thought it would be. In that one sentence, I went from having a babysitter to being one, but I rationalized that this move was one step closer to my eventual freedom. I didn't argue and slyly hid my disappointment. From behind a layer of white face paint and a shitty black cape, I hissed at her through a set of plastic fangs that were just too big. To anyone watching us, I was certain that the sight of Dracula holding hands with Raggedy Ann was some sort of affront to the Gothic deities I had read so much about. But by the time we reached the curb at the edge of our front yard, I was already concocting a plan to ensure my freedom in the coming years. By a sheer technicality, I knew that I could stay true to mother's rule of not going past the intersection, 3 blocks north of our house, by turning onto Lindell and taking it all the way down to where it dead ended. It was no secret that an abandoned house sat deep in the woods beyond the squat, concrete pillars set into place by the city when the property fell into an overgrown plot of disuse, that Anne would be terrified to ever leave our house again. After laying her eyes upon that vacant, dilapidated house, I was certain. Remembering how scared I was when I first saw the place, I knew that I did not need to fabricate any sort of urban legend to accompany it. The sight of it alone, brooding and riddled with forest creatures, would populate our nightmares. Anne refused to take one further step past the concrete pylons, but I knew that I had to, at least knock on the door to bring as much fear to her as possible. Raggedy Ann got so scared she peed her pants, I repeated in a sing-song manner as I hurried down the old driveway. Whether once a robust layer of gravel or a form of asphalt, it was hard to tell because Mother Nature had crept in resolutely and that whole area appeared to be frozen in the last moments of digestion. I made sure to stay within the beam of Anne's flashlight as I approached the front door of the house. The rotted wood of the front porch was missing in places and threatened to give way in others. I turned back to wave at Anne, then swallowed a vinegary pool of fear before giving the door a quick knock. Through the open holes that were once windows, I listened as my knocks evaporated into the chilled depth of the unlit structure. My plan was to let out a sudden scream and sprint back towards Anne, all, all under the guise of witnessing some horrific monstrosity peering back at me from the mouth of a broken window. That alone would be sufficient enough to scar her from ever trick or treating with me again, or so I told myself. To this day, I wish I could have seen my plan to fruition instead of the alternative. Beyond a thin split in the front door, I saw a faint light turn on. Disbelief outweighed fear, and I squinted, trying to focus harder on it. The light was so ambiguous. I could not tell if it was a candle or an electric light, but there was no question about its presence. More mindful of my retreating footsteps than I was during my approach, I backed slowly away from the door in the house and that awful, eerie glow. When the door opened, a flash freeze engulfed my heart, soon followed by my feet. In contrast to the endless dark of the house, and even in opposition to the light, a silky blue colored first caught my eye. Vibrating shock slowed my thoughts, and it took many moments for me to realize that the shimmering blue fabric was something like a one piece bikini, stretched near to ripping over a lumpy, disproportional body of swarthy old woman. There was no distinction between the color of her hair and the pitch blackness in the unlit area of the house. A dingy tiara sat atop her head, providing the only notable separation between where she stopped and the night began. I managed to break one foot free of its frozen state and slid it backwards. The noise that my scraping foot produced, or the motion itself, seemed to interest the lady because she squinted her already thinned eyes and tilted her head at me. Her powdery blue fabric attached to the shoulders of its parent cloth and wrapped around her neck in a wide loop. Oh no, I'm sorry, I skipped a line. Her pimpled cheek made contact with a ruffled swath of powdery blue fabric attached to the shoulder of its parent cloth and wrapped around her neck in a wide loop. Trick or treat, she slurred out, even though to my ears it sounded more like It was then that she did something that set fire to the ice in my body. Off the smile with that forever torment my off the smile that will forever torment my soul even long after I'm dead and gone. My mind reeled in the lapping shores of a nightmare. Staring back at me was a gaping wound that could scarcely be considered a mouth. It was congested with yellow, broken shards, as if every misshapen, absurdly sized tooth had been stabbed into her gums by a blinking, palsied hand. Palsied hand. They jutted out in a weathered putridity at so many bulging angles that her lips were stretched tighter than her outfit and appeared dry and cracked, desperately out of reach from her tongue moisture. Sup, Dark Vampira? Vampira? I sprinted away from that thing and that place at such a speed in my haste I nearly dislocated Anne's shoulder when I snatched her arm. My mind saved nothing from our run home, save a numb deafness and awkward glances from fellow trick-or-treaters at what I can only assume to be my incoherent ramblings. Anne and I ran straight into our mother's arms after we stormed through the front door. Our tears and our blathering sent father into a state of worry, manifested as anger, and brought forth mother's comforting, nurturing side. Father slammed and locked the door, then promptly turned off the porch light. It was many minutes before we were calm enough to release our death grip on mother. As she tried to pry out the convoluted details of our story, father began scooping up the contents of our candy bags that we had so feverishly discarded on the search for sanctuary. From within the piled mass of candy, father would chew two small burlap pouches, each tied off with a blue silk ribbon. He gave them a shake as if to question us, but my pale, terrified expression, coupled with the sharp rattling sound from inside each sack, must have been enough for an answer. From the mind and mouth of my sister, whose innocent wisdom presented her a world of unlimited beliefs and possibilities, came the words, the tooth fairy. Father hurried to the kitchen table, proceeding to empty the pouches with a controlled panic. In a cacophony of taps and rattles, a dozen or 100 or 1,000,000 teeth poured on the table like a bone waterfall. Mother screamed, and father was on the phone with the police before the last nightmarish shard rolled from the pile of its brethren and slapped onto the floor. The authorities found nothing in the abandoned house past the dead end of Lindell Street. No bodies were unearthed, no teeth, no silky blue fabric was discovered after the fire department burnt it to the ground. But that place, that woman, and her grotesque teeth are immortal in my mind. I do not relish the fact that I've become an unwilling victim in what is now the most widely known urban legend in my area. I only tell you my experience as a warning to pay careful mind to what truths you wish to seek. She says, all right. All right. Anybody got any more stories? I'll read. Oop. If not, I will read. Oh, wait, what's this? Oh, no, this is the D.A. Schneider story. I will read another creepypasta and then I will read another one of Brad's stories. Who should you subscribe to? You should subscribe to everybody who has content on their channel that's in here. So let's do a roll call. Roll call if you got content in your channel. Like four warnings. Four warnings. Mr. Reality there. The Whore Hive. Dark Vampire, do you have content? Fear Crawler. Mandy's going to have content soon. She's working on it. Where's Four Warnings? Did Four Warnings pass out again? Hey, I can do the voice of a roller coaster. Yeah, totally. Totally down for that, dude. Like what kind of roller coaster? Like should I? All right, we'll just give it a go. Hold on. Let me puff on my cigarette some more. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Mr. Reality. I just see what you said. Yeah, I worked on it a lot. I think it's pretty much done. I think it's good. I need a couple more, like another light string or something like that for the tree there, so I can do the whole tree, but I can't afford that right now. So, gotta do it while I can. Oh, did she? Well, it's good that she knows Dewey. She knows that I am Dewey. All right. And she does know Dewey because she knows me. All right. So another story by Brad Drake V. What is going on in mid Missouri? As I type this, I can see him outside my window. He's been standing across the street from my house for an hour. But his voice, the way he talks to me, sounds like he's in my head. As I laugh, I applied for a job at a seasonal Halloween attraction near my home in Jefferson County, Missouri, but I have yet to find anything funny about it. Dot dot K cab EMOC. Oh, all right. I see what's going on here. Dot Kiab EMOC Alt Yo Dean U Ere C Selrock. Backwards, that's Charles is here. We need you to come back. Guy speaks backwards. Sorry, I thought that would help. It didn't. He's still out there. I can't believe nobody is talking about this. The Jefferson County Prison Break Race is an annual event where you can sign up to be a prisoner and escape the abandoned Missouri State Penitentiary, then race to the finish line through the streets of Jefferson City. They just finished their seventh annual run, and after looking at the employee handbook, I, I now know why I can't find any information on past employees. He's getting closer. Shit. Below, I'm going to, or should I be saying all this like, below, I'm going to transcribe the handbook I was given when I was hired. I thought this was a good joke at first when I first read it. The man's voice in my head had been convinced me otherwise. Needless to say, I quit the next day. Maybe by typing this out, I can find a way to get rid of this guy. On behalf of the Genesis Group LLC, we would like to extend a most sincere thank you for helping us execute what we know will be our most successful prison break race yet. We're sure that you're as excited about this year's event as much as we are. However, we implore you to read and understand the following materials concerning the standards and practices established by the Genesis Group LLC and its affiliates established first term 781 UMT. Introduction. Provided employees a thoroughly entertaining and immersive environment in which to work is the top priority of the Genesis Group LLC. To ensure they're committed to this entity provides training and guidance about working in a conscious manner or levels ignorant and autonomous thereof. It is the responsibility of every employee to adhere to workplace ordinances consistent with Quadrant's Directive F26-4, F26-7, and X1-17, located in the Procedures and Guidelines Enchiridion. These rules are written with this commitment in mind. This handbook outlines the responsibilities and procedures to ensure workplace integrity. Regular updates to this manual will occur at the behest of one to emphasize this entity's commitment to self-preservation and manifest actions. Loyalty to the procedures and responsibilities detailed in this manual are predominant in continuity by reducing the number of workplace injuries due to complacency, free will, and/or unauthorized third-party intervention. It's just Brad. It's just like I think I know what's going on here. In order to maintain a resolute work environment, entertainers must stay within their assigned station. Each entertainer will be assigned only one station. If you were not assigned to a station during orientation, please contact one of the wardens located in stations A, L2, and Z. Under no circumstances are entertainers working within stations B, C, and L1 to address their warden, lest they be held to strict disciplinary action, including but not limited to suspension, termination, or reassignment to basement level. Yeah, this is totally what's going on. Basement level 3. Getting to know your station. Please refer to your assigned station section before further information regarding policies and guidelines. Section A. Position here, you're the first point of contact with the prisoners. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that you establish an intense and terrifying Halloween experience. Remember, the goal here is to ensure that every party involved has fun. Employees assigned to this station will be granted clearance level A1-1F, depending on relative experience. Each day of the event, 3 races will be held. It is your responsibility to perform a regular head count before each race, then relay your results to Station B. During each race, a JCPBR employee will be present within the group of prisoners to act as patron of the event. Typically, this employee will be from a station level or realm determined solely by your warden or those of CL5 and above. This employee will not attempt to speak, nor will they be given the ability to speak. Under no circumstances are you permitted to initiate communication with this employee. Also, it is your duty to dissuade other prisoners in Station A from doing the same. In the event that this employee communicates with you or a prisoner, whether verbally, telepathically, or spiritually, vacate your station immediately and seek shelter within the Panic Room 1A, located adjacent to the infirmary. Anywhere from 1 to 7 seconds before the start of each race, prisoners will be exposed to a minimal amount of scares by a predetermined group of entertainers. If a prisoner attempts to flee the attraction or crosses the starting line too early due to the terror, they will be detained to your warden's office for the remainder of the event, and you are to adjust your head count accordingly. No matter how realistic or agonizing they may sound, any subsequent noises emanating from said detention will be none of your concern. After the starting bell was rung, all the prisoners begin to escape. It is then your responsibility to clean and reorganize your station to prepare for the next race. This includes, but is not limited to, the following: trash removal, wiping down all horizontal surfaces, mopping the floors with greater detail paid to problem areas where fluids may have collected. Once the next group of prisoners has arrived, repeat the above steps. Station B. As an entertainer located in this station, you are the second point of contact with our prisoners. The first outdoor obstacle, and as such, this is the first outdoor obstacle, and as such, you will not be under direct supervision of a warden. You will be granted a clearance level 2A. You have only 2 responsibilities, but they are no less important than any other. As the prisoners approach the chain link fence obstacle, you ought to take an exact head count and relay that result back to Station A for comparison. In the likely event that your result differs from that of Station A, fill out Form Non-Disclosure Order A7-1 anomalous and submit them to the doctor by sunset of that day. Failure to provide proper documentation of prisoner head count discrepancies will result in the immediate reassessment of your position to basement level 3. Maintain the chain link fence obstacle to ensure that it is in proper working order. Maintenance duties include repairing broken links, posts, and footings, removal of debris caught within the razor wire. Creativity is highly encouraged by the Genesis Group, LLC. The experience of the prisoners during this portion of the race is in your hands. Some imaginative horrifics you may consider are increasing the voltage of the fence, encouraging the prisoners to seek help from the speechless employee noted in the description of Station A. Note, these actions will greatly affect the head count result of your subsequent stations. Relative documentation will need to be filled out and submitted. Station C. Station C consists of 4 square acres of dense forest and is JCPBR's first open obstacle, as there are no manifestly physical hindrances to the prisoners. You will be assigned with as many as 9 or as few as 1 other entertainers to maintain order and keep your patrons moving in the right direction. All entertainers assigned to Station C will be granted clearance level 3C. You are forbidden from acknowledging questions from the prisoners regarding the status of the following: time of day, both previous and presently, location of the exit, cries for help, whether from the prisoners or fellow entertainers, And the most common question, what is that thing over there? Throughout the duration of your residence in Station C, you are required to perform multiple head counts and relay those results to Station B and Station L1. Any discrepancies in your results may need to be noted. Documentation is not required at this station. Shadow people and those of other form will be strategically distributed throughout this station, and they will have full reign over the Halloween entertainment of the prisoners. Shadow people and those of other form are excluded in perpetuity from the Genesis Group's strict no physical contact policy. You will have final determination on whether aforementioned contact results in injury of malice, intent, or accident to the prisoners. Upon your immediate observation of said injuries, the doctor will arrive to escort the infirm to redacted. Note, you are not permitted to communicate with those of other form or the doctor, lest you succumb to the similar fate as their victims and or patients. Concerning the shadow people, they will not make their presence known to you unless they deem it necessary, or they sense your fear, or they are in a state of advanced starvation. In the unfortunate event any of the latter occurs, we hope that your experience as an employee of the Genesis Group LLC has been a memorable one. The pit will be guarded by no less than 2 counterpoint officers at any given time, and this aggressively off limits to anyone of CL9 or lower, a maximum safe distance of 33 feet from the pit for material entities and 7 feet for non-materials must be observed at all times when patrolling Station C. A full list of consequences resulting from disloyalty to these established boundaries can be received from this manufacturer via written or sacrificial request. For the safety of yourself and the other entertainers and the prisoners, you are not required to visit the infirmary until your third onset of berserk nausea, and only if it is accompanied by a loathsome disdain for your fellow man. All other ailments will be treated by the doctor if deemed threatening. Station L1. Note: returning Genesis Group LLC employees do not proceed until they have completely filled out and submitted the non-disclosure order A9-1 concerning the disappearance and relocation of stations D through K and the dissolutions of stations M through Y. As reparation for your experiences, returning employees have been granted an increase of 1 full level of clearance. Station 1 is a convoluted, labyrinthine maze that winds its way through the streets of downtown Jefferson City and covers an area of approximately 12 square miles. This station begins at 115 Lafayette Street and ends with exits fluctuating between 305 Ash Street and a location only available to those of CL6 and above. It is a very chaotic, often terrifying course, and for this reason, we require a minimum of 3 officers and 6 entertainers per square mile. The prisoners will enter Station 1 through the portal at Lafayette Street, where they will be instantly separated from one another. An initial head count is not to be performed by anyone below CL6. Separation and confusion, not creatures and features, are the terrifying factors in Station L1. Upon receiving a final head count results for each group from Station C, immediately conduct a secondary head count of your own and provide the officers at Station L1's exit portal with the difference, whether positive or negative. If during your patrol, vestiges of Station D through K become apparent, notify the nearest counterpoint officer immediately. Failing that, cordon off the afflicted area and stand patrol until that appropriate officer is able to relieve you. A maximum safe time of peering into the rift is 3 seconds for all known forms of vision. If vision is maintained for longer than the maximum safe time, immediately seek the infirmary and the doctor's assistance, after which he will determine the level of damage. As of 4th term 782 UTM, the Genesis Group LLC, the JCPB BR and their affiliates are not responsible for permanent loss of vision or, in more rare instances, the opposite, divinate omniscience or whatever. Neither prisoners nor employees of Genesis Group LLC are allowed to enter structures not owned and operated by said entity, regardless of state of mind, body, or spirit. And an expectation of at least 4 prisoners' injuries is to be held at any employee observing the race through Station L1. Note, the JCPBR, at the request of the Genesis Group LLC, has installed mimics within stations L1, L2, and Z. Therefore, it is vital to be recognized and understood the difference between the prisoners and their mimics. For further information, please refer to the accompanying handbook, The Other Me, Mimics, and How to Spot Them. Good night, Haley. I love you. Station L1, Subsection 1, Breaches. The following subsection touches on the protocol if, when, at any time by anyone, shadow people or those of other form are witnessed breaching their containment from Station C into Station L1. Also listed below is Charles. SP, we have found that the easiest way to deal with the breached shadow person is by ignoring them. These entities subsist on fear, anxiety, and much less commonly flesh. If you can stand resolute long enough, they will return to Station C once the next group of prisoners have begun that section. TOOF is, as of the publication date of this manual, there are no known course of action that is effective against those of other form. Avoid. Charles, this being manifest as a human boy aged 6 to 9 years, is only ever witnessed in the alleys bordering the neighborhood of Huntley Heights and only between the hours of 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. If a minimum safe distance of 113 feet is maintained, Charles will have a little to no long-lasting effects on the viewer. However, once within that range, Charles reveals his true self, of which the details are only speculative, and dispatches the victim. Although 113 feet is the minimum safe distance, we recommend 150 feet or more. From that range, unadulterated violence should be administered to sanitize this round from Charles' deviance for another 2 years. The goal of the JCPBR is to provide a fully terrifying Halloween experience by the way of confusion, chaos, and immersion. To ensure this commitment is met, we recommend subtly guiding the prisoners in Station L1 towards one of the following exhibits. The intersection of North 3rd Street and Ash Street, where the sisters lived, the cellar of Mrs. Hartwell's home, Maggie Makes Cookies, a hometown bakery that used a family recipe located on the corner of Boyd Street and 1st Street, the alleys around the Huntley Heights neighborhood. Station L2. This is the inaugural season for Station L2, and if you have been assigned here, then you are in luck. You have been identified as a top prospect by the Watchers and Quadrant Oracle of your local council viewer. Station L2 is truly a one-of-a-kind Halloween experience, not just for all patrons, but for the world as a whole. As a steward of Station L2, you will be automatically granted clearance level 4C, and what we have named the Stitch, Station L1 and 2, will occupy the same dimensional layer temporarily and spatially, and we have arranged the 2 stations to act independent of one another until a permanent moment when the 2 will align. These Stitch schedules are only available to those of CL19 and above. Note, our research suggests that it will not be uncommon for a prisoner or multiple prisoners to encounter themselves during a stitch. Such situations are impossible to comprehend in the moment, and you must be prepared for every possible reaction to this event. Every option should be exhausted to interrupt any duplicity that turns violent. Failing to do so could result in fatalities and subsequently lead into a world or combination of worlds which our math has been hitherto unable to resolve. Note, Do not engage yourself during a stitch. Your focus should be on the prisoners. You have been chosen to work at Station L2 because you've displayed impressive mental fortitude and physical strength to match. It would be a shame to lose an employee such as yourself in any world. While the framework of Station 2 is nearly identical to Station 1, there are a few notable differences. The intersection of North 3rd Street and Ash Street exists as South 3rd Street and Ash Street. The cellar of Miss Hartwell's home is not safe for anyone. Avoid. Maggie hates cookies at the corner of Boyd Street and First Street. The jumper on the roof of the Capitol building is, in fact, real and should be allowed to extinguish himself. Charlie spends 21 hours a day in Station L2 and roams freely. Avoid. In the event that you encounter the speechless employee, see Stations A and B, you must respond to each of his questions or statements with a mirrored version of his words. This is critical. The shadow people of Station L2 are too numerous to keep fed and to a degree they deem satisfying. Avoid. Panic Room A1 should be used in these unlikely, however, still mathematically possible events. A Class 4 magnitude M, C4M, or greater rift between Station C, A, or Z, the Station L2. PR-1A should be utilized only after containment protocol Orion has been initiated for such an event. A second Charlie appears. As if the publication date of this manual, there is no known example of this occurring. However, research from RTR officiates in cooperation with Redacted has suggested that this event is more probable than not and would be quite bad. You or any other entertainers received unscheduled communications from one or all of the stations on the JCPBR grounds or from a property within the umbrella of the Genesis Group LLC. Research suggests that such an event would cause a collective mass of known universe and the totality of gravity from dimensions unknown to converge upon Station L2 instantaneously. Avoid. If Station L2 is not stitched to L1 when an event, such as the ones listed above, occurs, the only direct route to the PR-1A is through the corridor of monoliths located in Miss Hartwell's cellar. Station L2 is a realm of wonder and possibilities, as the Genesis Group LLC are excited to see what creativity you have to offer in such a world. Station Z. Station Z lies beyond the exit portals of Station L1 and stitched L2 and extends to the eastern border of Jefferson County. The race through Station Z has been deemed the most difficult of all the stations to complete, and only the most experienced entertainers will be assigned to this location. It exists in a land of Stygian mortality. Before taking your post, please inform your warden if you are incapable of performing any of the following duties. Lift 50 to 500 pounds over your head in rapid succession. Remain on your feet, whether in motion or at a standstill, for up to and including 72 consecutive hours. Flawlessly read Latin in the dark. Navigate a group of prisoners through a variety of terrains. Take the life of a man or beast, sight unseen. Blindly perform ceremonious acts. Experience with rituals of summoning and or banishment is preferred. Create a believable backstory for your character and be resolute. You will discover that the prisoners are easily rattled when faced with unending darkness and impending doom. Below are some of the many questions you will face while escorting them through Station Z. Who are you? Where are we? Why does fellow prisoner look like me? Is this hell? Are we dead? Haley, I thought you went to bed. Manifest fears, including but not limited to irrational and incarnate, are inevitable for yourself as much as they are for the prisoners. So try to be compassionate. Despite your natural need for medical attention when injuries or mental deterioration occurs, refrain from seeking any. Despite what you think you may have heard or read, here at the JCPBR there is no doctor on staff. And all Any and all maladies are to be taken up with your warden, or failing that, a nearby counterpoint officer where remediation will be swift. It is recommended that you decide early, preferably when the prisoners enter Station Z, which ones you are willing to let perish and which ones you are going to attempt to save. It, it has been statistically proven that it is impossible to exit Station Z with the same number of prisoners that entered. In the highly unlikely occurrence of this, perform blade test number 1 or number 4, depending on the situation, to determine which of the prisoners has been mimicked. It is not uncommon for the entire group of prisoners in Station Z to have been mimicked. If this turns out to be the case, contact your warden immediately, then find safe retreat to PR-1A. Station Z, subsection 1, Flesh Ghouls. Flesh ghouls are named for their unique trait of being able to maintain state sentience while roaming the confines of the JCPBR in unliving vessels, much like a zombie. While constructed of flesh and bone, these creatures have the ability to walk through solid objects such as walls, trees, vehicles, and people, seemingly at will. Little is known about flesh ghouls, save for that they materialize during the second annual JCPBR, and while they are easily dispatched, they eventually return and in greater numbers. Recent studies suggest that these subsequent generations appear in twice the numbers as their immediate predecessors. You will know the approach of a horde of flesh ghouls because of the gray mist that surrounds their body glows by a process yet understood. In the darkness of Station Z, this mist can be easily seen from a great distance. Avoid. It is your responsibility to not allow anything other than the original prisoners to exit Station Z. For a detailed understanding of the consequences resulting from blatant disloyalty of this rule, refer to Third Layer Disciplinary Protocols, Section 12, Deathless Torture, what you can expect. As you wallow in this realm of consummate oblivion, here are a few tips to remember to help ease you through this troubling time. Your transition to and from Station A is much less heinous if you keep up on your janitorial duties before each race. Be sure to fill out Non-Disclosure Order A7-1 anomalous each and every time, lest the consequences increase in severity. Do your best to lure shadow people into the pit. That will make your transition more palpable. Relax. It is believed that traversing the ether between stations L1 and L2 become more manageable over time. However, as stated above, do not engage yourself. This timeline is precious and fragile. If you locate the exit portal of Station Z, then suddenly find yourself on the roof of the Capitol building, remember, there are multiple worlds coexisting below you, all of which provide respite from your sentence. It's okay to jump. It's Halloween. Have fun. We want to thank you again for choosing to spend your life with the Genesis Group LLC and the Jefferson County Prison Break Race. End notes. Entertainer is the original classification of employees hired to perform as warden, officers, zombies, creatures, both aerial and terrestrial. Prisoners and Delta possessors were applicable in the event that you find your classification inexplicably changed. Please consult the doctor located at basement level 3. In the event that your local warden is unavailable, refer immediately to the nearest counterpoint officer for remediation. Termination refers to an induced abortion of employee by the JCPBR, cessation of life or relative capacity thereof, and instantaneous designation to the third layer for a minimum of no less than 0.0075 cycles UMT, 75 years. Prisoner is the classification given to paid entrants of the JCPBR. As of third term 217 UMT, the infirmary is currently off limits to any Genesis Group LLC employee possessing a clearance level 4B or lower. The pit has been constructed specifically for use by the JCPBR under the specifications and perceptions found within the Awakening Protocol of second term 2 UMT. As of fourth term 781 UMT, the rift is described as an unintentional confluence of two or more realms that have been previously categorized as inherent, classified 4-7 or 4 4-7 to 9-7. Stringent constructed, or MX7, is a variety of rift that can be labeled as such if it maintained a size of at least 27.4 feet in width for a minimum of 0.000036 cycles. Any occurrence following beneath these determinations will be deemed a minor rift and therefore non-threatening. So this was a play on Hell House, wasn't it? Wasn't it, Brad? Are you even still here? Right? This is, yeah. It sounds like the same company. It's just I got into more detail now. Of course I noticed it. You think you're talking to? What? Actually, I noticed it right off the bat. I was like, wait a minute. Johnny, I'm sorry you got a headache, man. Your head probably hurts because all the damn smoke, man. Huh? Where did who get what cool hoodie? I don't have a hoodie on, but I do have this The Crow Flies t-shirt that you can find in my merch store in the description below. Thank you, April. All right. Let's find another story. All right. I'm going to hit the cigarette a couple more times and take a drink of water. That was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, Brad. What's up, Miss Dolo? I had to plug it. Well, yeah, when you said it wasn't a story, I didn't realize it was an employee handbook. All right. This next story is called Lying Within by Arajian. I'm glad to have friends. I know a lot of people find high school a really lonely and difficult time, but for me it was surprisingly easy. I wouldn't say I was popular by any stretch of the word. Maybe there was just a whole lot of outcasts at my school and I fit in perfectly. The closest friend I had was Bridget. She and I both loved to play online games like WoW or GTA, and that's actually how we met. It's nice to have a crew in GTA or a clan in WoW. It's called a guild in WoW. And so I joined one, and she was the first person to help me get assimilated with both games. Little did I know that the beautiful and sometimes sarcastic voice on the other end was also went to my school. The other two of my friends sort of tagged along with Bridget, but they were no less special to me. Ryan, who was into more outdoorsy things, and Elise, who was into online gaming just as much as me and Bridget. Sadly, it was the summer after graduation, and I knew that we would all be parting ways after 4 years of wonderful friendship. Ryan, being the more ballsy of us, asked us to take a final road trip with him to an abandoned home he knew of. We were always into things like that: old burned down mansions or deserted hospitals, basically anything run down and forgotten. I don't think any of us were hesitant to say yes. The chance to see one final scary slash interesting old home was incredible, and it would also give us a chance to really say our goodbyes before we left for university in the fall. The town where the home sat wasn't far from our own, and so we left at sunset. We usually did, and headed out on our last great adventure. I took my Nikon with me, just in case I saw something interesting to snap a picture of. As we rolled into the sleepy town, we were feeling a little hungry, so we stopped at a diner. "Last chance to turn back," said Ryan as he chomped down on a burger. "Hey, none of us have pissed ourselves on one of these outings," said Bridget. We all laughed as Ryan looked a little upset. Oh no, maybe she said it like, "Hey, none of us have pissed ourselves on one of these outings." I I told you I had to pee. How was I supposed to know that damn mouse would jump out at me? He shot back. "In all seriousness, I'm really glad you found this place, Ryan, and I'm glad I could see it with you guys. I'm really going to miss you all," I said to everyone at our booth. "Don't worry, Sean. We'll see each other on break back here, and I promise we'll play online as much as possible," Elise said, smiling at me. I smiled back. Thanks. We finished our meal and headed out the door after dropping a tip for the waitress. I looked down to adjust my camera and get it ready when a wrinkly arm grabbed me. "There's more to that brick and mortar in them walls." "Oh no, there's more than brick and mortar in them walls," he shouted at me. I struggled and fought with him to pull my arm away, but he held on tight and stared directly into my eyes. "There's more than brick and mortar in those walls," he shouted even louder this time. Ryan jumped in between us. "Let him go, you old fuck." Ryan pushed the old man away. The man fell on the floor but continued to stare up at us with broken hips. As I walked out to the car, he never broke his gaze, even as the ambulance came and took him away. All right, I made the broken hip part, the ambulance. So, after shaking what the crazy old man said out of my thoughts, I continued to read up. I continued to ready up my camera. I checked the SD card to make sure it was completely empty for our last trip. We turned into a dark dirt road surrounded by tall trees. The car slipped and slid all the way down and on loose gravel. Then, all of a sudden, the trees stopped and we were sitting quietly under the full moon. What? And all of a sudden, the trees stopped, and there, sitting quietly under the full moon, was the biggest and most beautiful brick antebellum home I had ever seen. It had a long driveway and nothing but clear pastures all around it. As we pulled up, I almost could picture my dream home, minus the boarded up windows and caved in roof, of course. The car came to a halt, and Ryan quickly flipped off the lights. We let our eyes adjust and then slowly crept out of the blue sedan. I pulled up my camera and flipped on the flash. I put my camera right where I thought the front door would be and snapped a picture. The sound broke the silence. "Wow," whispered Elise, staring in amazement and wonder at the scene that was before us. "What she said," Ryan replied. We walked up on the porch and tried to keep the noise level to a minimum, although the creaking floorboards didn't help. "I think we're good," Ryan whispered. "There's still boards on the door and all the windows are shut tight, so no one can be in there." "Wait, I think I saw a basement door on the side of the house. Couldn't someone get in through there?" asked Bridget. "I don't think so. It's probably all blocked off by fallen floorboards and stuff," he replied. Ryan backed up and looked at the door, taking a quick breath. I realized what he might be thinking. "Wait, you're not going—" Ryan kicked the door in and smashed the hinges. "You stupid asshole," I shouted. "What if someone actually is in there?" "There's no one in there. Now quit being a pussy and let's go." Ryan led the way into the home. We stood in the marble foyer in front of us. And in front of us, two staircases climbed up the walls to the second floor balcony. Directly in front of us was an opening that spilled into a sunroom and then the back porch beyond that. I pulled up my camera and pointed it at the beautiful stairs, and the flash lit up the room and bounced off the marble floor. I want to go see the back portion of the house, begged Elise. I looked I looked to my left and saw a sitting room full of old furniture and a dusty piano. That's where I'm going. I guess we're splitting up then, asked Ryan. Yep, I said, taking in the scenery in front of me. The room was ornately decorated from armchairs and sofas that seemed to be at least 100 years back. I walked over to the piano took a took a picture of it. A smile came across my face as I got a little curious. I looked around to make sure the others were gone and wouldn't get on me for making noise. I lifted up the keyboard cover, sending out an acoustic thud through the whole room. Please work, I pleaded as I reached out for the ivory keys. Ding! Yes, they work, I thought. I put my camera down and pulled up the old stool. I thought back to the song my grandma had taught me, Chopsticks. I think everyone who's ever played piano knows it. Surprisingly, I remembered every note and finished it, proud of my work, and got in the mood for creepy and placed my hands on the lowest and highest back keys. It made an eerie noise, and then, ah, somebody help me, please! Somebody please help! I heard Elise shout from the foyer. I left my camera behind and rushed to her. She was dangling from the balcony and I got under her. As I did, she fell into my arms and we both collapsed on the ground. Ryan and Bridget came running. What the hell happened? Asked Ryan. Elise jumped and ran outside, crying as Bridget ran after her. I looked at Ryan. Come on. I chased after the two of them as Ryan followed behind me with a look of irritation. Bridget was consoling Elise, who was buried in Bridget's chest, crying. What's going on? Asked Ryan. She said someone pushed her off the balcony, replied Bridget. Oh my God, she probably just tripped and fell, Ryan said, rolling his eyes. Fuck you, shouted Elise, still crying hysterically. You're an asshole sometimes, Ryan, snapped Bridget. I tried to take Bridget's side. Maybe we should just go. No, damn it, Ryan shouted back at me. Look, I guess I should stay here and watch after them. You just go get the pictures you came here for, and then we'll go. I promised to be quick and told Elise I'd be right back and then headed back into the house. I walked back into the moonlit home and over to the sitting room. I retrieved my camera and then decided to head upstairs. As I reached the second floor, I snapped a picture looking down at the foyer. I turned to my right and headed down a hallway. At the end of it was a large carpeted bedroom with a big sleigh bed against the back wall. After snapping a picture, all the antique dressers and vanity, I walked over to another door. Beyond the door was a gorgeous bathroom with white cast iron tub in the middle, and the floor was white tile, and one bowed out window was on the left. The window let in more light than any other part of the house, so for me, this would be the best for pictures. I snapped a few of the tub and then the sink in front of the large mirror. After I snapped the picture and looked down to reset my camera, I looked back up to see a figure in the mirror standing in the doorway. I gasped and I quickly shot around. The figure was completely dark and I saw no features. Ryan, is everything okay with Elise? I asked, backing up to the outer door across from it. Suddenly, the figure began to bolt around the tub and I didn't hesitate to turn and run. I shot out of the next bedroom as I felt whatever it was chasing me right at my heels. As I ran down the stairs, I looked up and saw it just at the top, feet away from me. It jumped onto the marble foyer as I ran into the kitchen. I looked behind me and saw him sprinting towards me. I rushed for the open door in front of me and then felt nothing under my feet. I fell down the steps and into the basement as my camera that was around my neck slid away from me. I shook the pain from my head and I looked up at the door, seeing the figure, and then the door closed. The basement was completely dark now as I heard its footsteps creaking slowly down the staircase, then silence. My camera flashed right at me and nearly blinded me. I decided to get down on my hands and knees and crawl to where it came from. I felt the hard concrete and then finally my camera. I reached for it and quickly turned to the back screen. I saw the last picture on. I saw the last picture. On it was me holding my hands up to block the flash, but behind me were more hands reaching out for me. They jutted out from the brick wall, and then I noticed Elise's face, her eyes bulging out, her body stuck on the wall. Behind me in the picture, I saw the face of the old man smiling and reaching for me. Then I heard him speaking into my ear. I told you there was more than brick and mortar in these walls. What's up, Jersey? My eyeballs. Really? I'm glad to hear that, Brad. Unfortunately, Monday is usually the start of the work week. But at least it starts out good, right? You know? Now, here's a short one. It's called Message from a Friend by Pandastesis. Pandastesis. Hello there. It's funny how after all this time I still don't know your name, but it doesn't even matter anyway, as long as I know you. Yeah, I know you seem confused right now. I know you enough to tell you this message will give you a reaction like that, but you shouldn't be. Well, at least not for long. You see, I think I already read this. Yeah, I already read this. I read this like last week or the week before. What do you mean, am I okay? What you mean, am I okay? Uh, yes, I have heard of the series. You talking about Oak Island where they're looking for the treasure? How come you ask me if I'm okay, Jack? Do I not seem okay? Do I look like I'm dying? All right, this story is called Stickler. It's by Dan at Blair, I think. Same as always, sir. I habitually quarried of the wispy man at my counter, or queried of the wispy man at my counter. The deep blue flannel look was new, but everything else about him was carved from a solid block of routine. The same haircut that failed to cover the bald spot in his head, the same muck encrusted work boots, and the same patient smile hid behind his oxygen tubes all adorned him neatly. He nodded as I placed the anticipated 2 gallons of milk, 24 pack of beer, not packs of beer, and a pack of cigarillos on the counter. I didn't bother counting the money he handed me, as it was always the exact change. I don't suppose I could convince you to help me carry my items to my cab tonight. Could I, Sonny? Was an old man. I don't suppose I could convince you to help me carry my items to my cab tonight, could I, Sonny? He asked, despite knowing my response. You know as well as I do, sir, that company policy prohibits. Wait. Oh, never mind. I thought I already read this one too. You know as well as I do, sir, that company policy prohibits the sole employee from leaving the station. It's a security risk. Besides, I would hate to cause any undue delay for the next people in line, I said, motioning to the husky woman towering blonde man in my line. Unhelpfully, both customers waved me on, signaling that they didn't mind the wait. I'm sorry, but I must insist on not leaving the store, I said. Didn't anyone raise you right? Said the blond man, his muscled physique almost pouncing in indignation. What do you have against helping an old man? Nothing at all, sir, but rules exist for a reason. I am truly sorry. Please trust me when I say that he is capable of getting into his car without my help, I said. Do they train you in rudeness here? The woman at my counter asked. Sir, I'd be happy to help you once I'm done checking out, she said, directed at the elderly gentleman. Menthol 100s in the blue box, two of your $3 scratch tickets, and a pint of your cheapest vodka, she ordered curtly. May I see some identification, miss? Her eyes slid down her nose as she lowered her crow's feet and circled eyes at me. Does it look like I'm underage? She countered. No, ma'am, but I must card every person who comes through here as a matter of policy, I politely defended. Not that either of us need to be carded, but you didn't card him, she said, pointing to the elderly gentleman. I am aware of that man, but please trust me that I have every intention of being as helpful as possible to the people who frequent here. Just bear with me, and I will have you on your way. Purchase in tow, I pleaded. I don't have time for this. The meter's running, the elderly man complained as he shuffled out the door. Just catch up as soon as you can help me, and I'll start on my way, ma'am. Does watching an old man barely able to carry his groceries make you feel powerful? The blond man inquisited. What type of sick, uncaring prick would do that? No, sir, I'm just trying my best to get everyone checked out in an orderly fashion. If you would please wait your turn, I will make sure that everything is running smoothly. If you think you can pull your head out of your ass long enough to cure your terminal dipshittery, put 20 on pump 5. If it is not ready when I get back, I'll call whoever your supervisor is supposed to be, no matter what hour it is, and you can explain your cruel incompetence to them, the man yelled, his light blond hair brown, nearly invisible in the deep purple hue of his face as he tossed his payment in my direction before heading out the door to assist the old man. Sir, what grade of fuel do you want? I called after him, hoping to distract or delay. After he left, I returned my attention to the woman at my counter. I am truly extremely sorry for the delay, but if you watch out the window, you'll know as much as I do. Eyebrow raised as she humored my request as I focused on processing her transaction. I didn't need to watch or be convinced of anything. I already knew his fate. The blond man chatted with the elderly gentleman while escorting him back to his turquoise taxi, parked at the street corner, just as it was every night. Despite the glances the blond man shot in my direction, I could only pity him, for he only had about 7 steps left. I winced at the 6th step and watched the blond man as he was nearly folded in two by a swift, calculated grab into the taxi. The door was closed before the blond man had even made a sound. Turn away now, ma'am, I advised. Unresponsive, she stood blankly as the elderly man nodded at us from his seat. For the slightest of moments, his smile sharpened into a gaunt, mocking taunt, the delight in his eyes reflected in the frost on the car window. Steadying herself on the counter, the woman just stared at me as if she was asking a question. If you want an explanation of what that old man is, I can't give you that. All I know is the last 4 attendants disappeared in the middle of the night without so much as locking up the station, I explained. Luckily for me, I'm the one they hired to be the stickler to the rules. Well, that wasn't a very impressive story. But I think I'm going to call it, guys. So, thank you everyone for hanging out. I'm glad you all showed up and hung out, listened to some stories. I'm glad Brad let me read a couple of his. And I'm glad Mandy gave me a couple of hers to read. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. Some of you will probably catch on Yeah, that was a smart kid. Some of you I will probably catch on Discord. But y'all have a good one. Yep. Thank you all for coming.